no coach will leave out a player because he's from development. No coach. I can remember when Jabu Pule was promoted, he immediately made an impact. Now, if you look at, I know Eckstein mentioned the salary thing. If you look at Jabu,
sure,
he made sure that the club realized his value and rewarded him accordingly. If you look at Pule, and everybody's up about Chiefs not paying him the salary he wants, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
If you look at the number of games he played versus the goals he scored versus the assist he made, do you think it justifies the amount of money he wants? In fairness, we have to be fair to the club as well.
Sure.
He hasn't done enough for them to pay him the salary he wants. Even if he's a crowd favorite, it doesn't interpret into him being a player that is contributing to the extent of what he wants to earn. You know, young players must understand one thing. When they're given an opportunity, they took him from a mind team at 20 years old. What can you develop with a player of 20? Very little. You can only do so much to improve him because his development cycle has come close to an end.
Sure.
So if he was 16 or 17 years, then we could expect that they had more time to work with him. So they could only improve. He's a very technically good, gifted player, very explosive player. But tactically, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. Decision-making has to be improved. Goal scoring has to improve. So when you look at it from that perspective, if you're sitting in that seat and you have a player who's contributed X, but he wants Y, you've got to consider and say, is he worth the money that he wants? And to be quite fair, I don't think he was worth 100,000 a month based on his performance. Because if you look at him, he's 28 years old. What more can they do to further develop him? Only so much. I think under Middendorf, he would have improved as a player tactically, but it would have taken a while for him to reach the level of what he expects. And you can't compare his salary to the players that they brought from outside. Those players have gone there, established themselves, and that is why Chiefs have signed them. He came from the development. If Chiefs didn't sign him from the mines, he would have probably still been playing somewhere else. You understand? But given this platform, I think in fairness, Pule should have persevered and proven himself on the field, and I'm quite certain if he had done that, Chiefs would have increased his salary to what he wanted.
To tell us more on this story, we had a gentleman who conducted an interview with Pule Ekstein this Wednesday. Clint, I'm sure you read the story. What did you make of the story, and what do you make of what Farouk Khan is saying about what is happening at Kaizer Chiefs in the development and Pule Ekstein?
Yeah, Shane, thank you, and thank you to all the listeners that are tuned in and listening to the story. Firstly, to Masebe, one of the best interviews I've read in Soccer Laduma in a long time. So congratulations. A lot of people think this Q&A is quite easy, but certainly getting people to talk, especially a former Kaizer Chiefs player, to talk to Soccer Laduma was a massive coup for the readers, and I hope everyone appreciated the length that you went to make that happen. So well done. An excellent interview. You can hear the emotion, you can hear the sadness coming out of this guy. When you had him on the line, what was the overriding emotion? It sounds like he's disappointed to leave Kaizer Chiefs in this way, a club that he's done so much service for. And yes, Chiefs have done a lot for him. But what was the mood of the interview when talking to him?
Thank you, Clint, for that wonderful intro, and thank you, Shane and Simon. Yeah, when I spoke to Pule, I must say that he was very, very, very disappointed. That's one thing I picked up from talking to him, and he was just honest. He was just honest about everything I asked, and he sounded to me like he was still in disbelief. It was like it was a dream, but what I'm happy about is that he was still able to give us the answers that I was looking for. So yeah, it was a very sad interview and emotional.
Okay, he seems surprised at what developed here. In his eyes, clearly he feels he's done enough at the club to establish himself as a recognized player, as an entertainer, which the Chiefs fans want, which is South African soccer fans want. So he ticks that box. He hasn't given them any trouble. I know Farouk Khan spoke of Jabu Pule Ekstein back in the day, and certainly, yes, they rewarded Jabu, but certainly there were issues with Jabu while he was at Kaizer Chiefs. That didn't seem to happen with Eckstein to that extent. He was a good professional. He's 28. We're talking about a kid who's joined at 20, but let's be honest, at 28 as a player in his position, he's looking at possibly his last big move. So he's looking for a big signing on fee. He's looking to set himself up financially. Does it sound like he was being greedy? Does he sound ashamed of asking what he was asking for? Does he feel like he was in his rights to ask what he was asking for?
Yeah, he believes that what he was asking for is what he deserved. He says to me this season, when he looked at his contribution to the club, it was probably his best since he started playing for Kaizer Chiefs. And the understanding he had with Coach Ernst Middendorp when he arrived on how he wanted him to play and contribute to the team, he says the coach was impressed and he was satisfied with the progress, and he was looking forward to starting a new season with the coach, as we all know that the coach joined halfway through. So he was looking for that so that he can start afresh and then be a part of the coach's team and the plans going forward. And he said to me, like, he wasn't asking for much. He was asking for a raise, and the club wasn't prepared to meet him halfway. And so there's a point here in the interview where he says to me, the money he was asking for wasn't that much. He was just saying, okay, but I can't be on the same salary that I was on in the previous contract. So all I'm asking for is a raise so that I can continue. So yeah.
Without breaking away from what you're saying, but Masebe, did he mention the amount of money he was looking for at Kaizer Chiefs, stuff like that?
No. I think that one let us leave it out because
sure.
he also because of the confidentiality of
sure.
of things like that, we can't. I'm not prepared to say it because
Okay, let me jump in here because let's be honest, in South African football, unlike in the rest of the world,
sure,
there is so much secrecy around money in this league, and you've got to start asking questions. Why is there no transparency in what players earn? In Europe, we know what Pogba was bought for, and
sure.
we know what he's earning on a weekly basis. In Spain, we know what Messi's new contract, what he's asking for, and what he's earning on a weekly basis. Why is it in South Africa that these numbers are not made available? Because at the end of the day, soccer is entertainment, and money causes excitement. We want to know who is the highest paid player in the league. When it comes to figures, I believe Farouk Khan himself mentioned in the interview there that 100,000 was too much for a player like Eckstein. If you look in our Sia Gaboza section of the paper this week, the speculation is that Eckstein was on around 50,000 a month, if I'm not mistaken. He was offered in the region of 60,000, so 10,000 more. As a possible last big contract, I would assume if those are in fact the figures, that 10,000 is not that big a jump for someone who it's a short career. He was looking for 100,000 a month. And if we look at some of the highest earners in the PSL at clubs, there are players earning between 200 and 300,000 a month. So for a player like Eckstein in his prime, who's got a lot to offer, who clearly was in Coach Middendorp's plans. He said, Coach Middendorp, in his interview, if I'm correct, Masebe, Coach Middendorp came to him and said, the management don't want me to play you because of the contract issue.
Yeah, I said that, yeah.
However, I need you. I want you to play. So the coach clearly wanted him. So let's tick the box. Does the coach want you in your team? Yes, he does want you in the team. There also seems to be a very special relationship between Eckstein and Bobby Mutong before contract was discussed, to the point where Eckstein says, I looked for Bobby on the stands when I scored a goal. Me and him had a relationship. Now, you can't just be a squad player or an average player to be able to go up to a guy like Bob Stake and say, let's have this bet together. There's got to be a special relationship. So which means Bobby respected him and he respected Bobby. Yeah. At the end of the day, this was clearly a case of a player knowing his worth but not being valued by the club at the same level. I've also got to ask question marks around why he would have gone in on his own to sign his release papers. I would have liked the agent to have been with him. You don't want to do that as a player on your own.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think thinking back, maybe the agent possibly feels maybe he should have been there to protect his player a little bit more, or just give him a bit of moral support. But yeah, that's with regards the question to the numbers that they were talking. If our sources are anything to go by, Shan.
Yeah. As discussed by Clint Roper and Ubud Masebe, and now they've joined us. They've just walked into the room. Those are the two big men there in Biva Nazo and also Ulunga Adam. Like I said earlier, these are the men that I grew up reading their interviews. They are here. I'm sitting with them right here in studio. We'll hear from them a little bit later in the show. But gentlemen, I think that should be it for this story of Pule Ekstein. I think now we should move on because of time to the game between Sundowns and Wydad Casablanca for tomorrow at Lucas Moripe Stadium.
Soccer Duma Radio.
Okay, we're still here. Tune into Soccer Duma Radio live on a Friday. Now, earlier on in the show, we spoke to former Mamelodi Sundowns goalkeeper. He was the number one goalkeeper. He was in post when Mamelodi Sundowns lost to Al Ahly back in 2001, and that is John Tlale. But before we move on to his interview, we have in studio Ubud Ulunga Adam. Budlunga, welcome to Soccer Duma Radio live. Kunjani Bud?
Hi, all good, Buti. Nice to be here and speaking to the listeners.
Budlunga, this is a big game. And if you remember correctly, this is not the first time that Mamelodi Sundowns have been required to come from behind. We'll remember their game back in 2016 against AS Vita, the game which they won. Many fans who are saying it was through the back door. The 2-1 loss at home, and also the 1-0 loss here at home at Lucas Moripe Stadium. Now, Sundowns are faced with a daunting task of overcoming that 2-1 deficit against Wydad Casablanca. Do they have the legs to run 90 minutes tomorrow and produce a performance that they produced against Al Ahly a few weeks ago?
I definitely think so. Maybe not, in the same vein as the Al Ahly game where we will see 5 goals or so, but I think they have it in them. And you got to look at the plan and how Pizza plans for opposition, and also how he manages his team with the tight schedule that they've got. So I do believe that he'll come up with the right starting lineup in line with the game and what they want to achieve on Saturday.
Now, you are coach Peter Mosimane. You are faced with this huge game. They played a game on Wednesday against Black Leopards, and there was a pairing in that midfield of Nascimento and Umusa Lebusa. When you're playing this kind of game, an all-important game, do you still stick with that lineup that you played with against Black Leopards, or do you bring in now the big boys like Wayne Arends to lead the pack going into this game?
I think I would go for experience more than anything else. Sure. Players who have experienced the situations like this, especially in African competition, and the Wayne Arends is one of those guys that I think should be there. Maybe even though the boy that you mentioned, Libusa, did well in the first leg, I think I would sacrifice him for Wayne Arends, because it brings more to the team, especially also when you look at the attack when in terms of set pieces up front. So that's the one major change that I would make in the team.
Sure. Now, and also looking at this Mamelodi Sundowns team, this is the same team that went on back in 2016, because starting from the goals, Dennis Onyango was there back in 2016. He's still there. You've got your back four of Tebogo Langaman, of Ricardo Nascimento, of Wayne Arends. They are still there. Your midfield pivot of Uhlompo Kekana and Umabunda, they are still there. Your Lafort is still there. The only people who are not there is just Kama Billiard. It's Lafort who is injured, I think. There's also Upesita who is also not there. But majority of those players who won this title for Sundowns are still there. Will that work in favor of Sundowns, or will the experience of Vidar, because they are also former champions, they won it just after Sundowns won it. This will be an interesting, huge game.
Yeah, very, very interesting. And I think that would also stand Sundowns in a good state, because these players know each other very well and they've formed a bond on the field. And most of them are leaders in their own right. You've got Kekana who can lead, you've got Mabunda, you've got Ngonga, they've got tons of experience. So I think, come Saturday, that's what will stand them in good state.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we also had a chat with former Mamelodi Sundowns goalkeeper, that was John Tlale. He was there, like I said earlier, when they lost to Al Ahly back in 2001. Yeah, he was also there. This is how his interview went.
Soccer Duma Radio.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, now on the line we've got Mamelodi Sundowns legend. He was the goalkeeper during that final first leg in Pretoria and the second leg right there in Cairo versus Al Ahly. On the line we've got John Tlale. But John, welcome to Soccer Duma Radio. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm well, my brother, and you?
Very well, Budam. A fixture that looks difficult on paper, but this team, that Sundowns, they can overcome this Wydad Casablanca tomorrow.
Yeah, possibilities are there. No reason being now they're playing at home. They'll have a crowd behind them, and what I can tell you is that I think they must just have to attack from the word go, and they must make sure that they get that early goal that will unsettle the opponents, in order for the opponents to open up, because they'll try to attack to get more goals, and then that's when they'll punish them.
Sure. You were once in a similar position back in 2001, I remember vividly, but you guys were on the front foot against the Angolan team, Petro Atletico, but they now known as Petro de Luanda. You led 2-0 here at home, but almost gave away the lead in Angola.